When we talk about law, most people immediately think of rules written in books, regulations passed by governments, and boundaries set by authority. These are the external structures that govern behavior, keep order, and maintain balance in a society. Yet there exists another law, one far more powerful, unshakable, and eternal. This is the inner law, the law that is not written on paper, but carved into the very fabric of the human spirit. The law of love, the law of compassion, the law of truth. And when the external law collides with the inner law, a conflict arises that tests the strength of our character. At that moment, we must decide whether to follow the rules laid down by society or to obey the whisper of our heart. Imagine standing in a situation where someone you love is in danger, where their life, their happiness, their very being is at stake. The written law may tell you to step aside, to follow the rules, to let things take their course. But the inner law within you, the one that speaks not in words but in an undeniable feeling, tells you to act, to step forward, to protect, to save. That is the higher law, and it demands courage. It demands that you risk judgment, that you risk consequences, that you even risk being misunderstood by the world. Because what drives you is not a desire to rebel or to break rules for the sake of breaking them. It is the unshakable command of love, and love knows no boundaries. External laws are created for the masses, designed to manage behavior on a broad scale. They are general, impersonal, often rigid. But the inner law is deeply personal. It applies to you, to the unique moment you are in, to the particular person you are called to protect or uplift. And when you obey that inner law, you may look like a rule breaker to the world, but in truth, you are becoming a law keeper at a higher level. You are keeping the law of life itself, which is love. You are keeping the law of spirit, which recognizes the sacredness of every beating heart. This is where the real power lies. Understanding that the rules of the outside world are not always the final authority. There is something greater, something eternal that does not shift with time, politics, or circumstance. It is the law that has guided every act of genuine heroism throughout history. When a parent sacrifices everything for their child, when a friend risks their own safety to protect another, when an individual stands up against injustice, even though the world tells them to stay silent, they are not breaking the law, they are honoring the deepest law of all. The courage to follow the inner law does not come from logic, and it cannot always be explained to others. It is a quiet force that arises from the soul. It is the moment when the mind says, "You can't." But the heart says, "You must." It is the point where you feel the weight of fear pressing down on you, yet something greater lifts you up, almost as if invisible hands are carrying you forward. That is not rebellion, that is alignment with a truth bigger than any human system. And so, when one chooses to break the external law in order to save, to protect, to preserve love, they are not stepping into chaos. They are stepping into order, the highest order. They are choosing alignment with the ultimate truth, even if the world cannot see it. There is a sacred responsibility in this, because not every impulse, not every desire deserves to override the rules of society. But when the choice is guided by pure love, when it comes from a place of selflessness and protection, then it carries with it a divine authority that no judge, no official, no critic can truly stand against. This is what separates mere defiance from sacred courage. Defiance is fueled by ego, by a need to prove something, by anger or pride. Sacred courage is fueled by love, by the desire to uplift, by the instinct to protect what is precious. And when you act from that place, you may face punishment, you may face misunderstanding, but you will also experience a freedom that no system can give and no prison can take away. Because in the end, the inner law is the law of your own conscience. It is the law that allows you to look in the mirror and know that, no matter what the world says, you honored the truth within you. You did not turn your back on love. You did not silence the call of your spirit. And that inner peace, that inner certainty, is worth more than any approval from society. It is worth more than safety, more than comfort, even more than reputation. For what good is it to keep every external law, and yet betray the law of your own heart? What good is it to live safely while the people you love suffer? Because you did nothing. The truth is that every great transformation in human history has come from someone choosing the inner law over the outer one. Every step forward has come from an individual who was willing to endure criticism, punishment, or rejection because they refused to betray what was right within them. And you carry that same potential. You carry within you the same voice, the same law, the same inner compass that knows the difference between what is convenient and what is true. Love is the force that moves mountains, the invisible energy that pushes human beings beyond their natural limits, the quiet whisper that becomes a roar when someone we hold dear is in danger or in need. It is the most powerful motivator in existence, greater than fear, stronger than pain, deeper than any desire for wealth or recognition. Love does not need to be taught, because it is written into the very essence of who we are. From the moment we enter this world, we are seeking it, and for as long as we breathe, we are driven by it. When a person acts in the name of love, they tap into a strength they never knew they had, a courage that defies reason, a determination that seems to conquer every obstacle. There are countless stories where love became the fuel for unimaginable endurance. A mother working 3 jobs not because she wants wealth, but because she wants her children to have a life she never did. A father giving up his own dreams so his family can live with dignity. A friend staying awake all night beside a hospital bed, refusing to leave even when exhausted. None of these actions make sense if measured by logic, yet they make perfect sense when measured by the heart. Love alters the scale by which we measure effort, risk, and sacrifice. What looks impossible under normal circumstances becomes not only possible but inevitable when love is involved. Negative feelings can paralyze a person. Fear, anger, doubt, and despair have the power to weaken even the strongest will. Yet love has a strange way of transforming those feelings into fuel. Fear becomes vigilance. Anger becomes protection. Doubt becomes focus. Despair becomes a refusal to quit. When you love someone deeply, you no longer allow yourself to surrender to weakness. Because their well-being depends on your strength. Even in the darkest hour, the thought of losing them, or the thought of failing them, ignites a fire that cannot be put out. That is why people often discover the greatest version of themselves not in times of ease, but in moments where love demanded that they rise above their own limitations. Love also brings clarity. In a world filled with distractions, where so many chase after money, approval, or recognition, love cuts through the noise and reveals what truly matters. It shows you that happiness is not in possessions but in presence, not in titles but in togetherness, not in what you own but in who you hold. And when you realize this, the choices you make are no longer clouded by fear of judgment or greed for gain. They are guided by a higher compass, a compass that always points toward connection, toward unity, toward sacrifice for the sake of another. This is why love has been the root of every act of genuine bravery. Soldiers on the battlefield are not risking their lives for abstract concepts alone. They fight because of the love they hold for the people back home, for their comrades standing beside them. Activists who dedicate their lives to justice are fueled not only by anger at injustice, but by love for the people they defend. Innovators who push boundaries of science and medicine often begin because of love for a parent, a child, or someone they lost. When you trace back the spark that ignited the fire in their soul, you almost always arrive at love. It is also the reason love cannot be contained by fear. You can threaten a person, imprison them, even strip them of possessions, but if they love deeply, they remain unconquered. The chains of fear cannot bind a heart set on protecting or uplifting another. A person may tolerate suffering for themselves, but for the ones they love, they become fearless. That is why history is filled with examples of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts when love demanded it. They did not ask for courage, Love gave it to them. They did not ask for strength, love poured it into them. They did not ask for endurance, love carried them through. Love, when allowed to flow freely, also heals the wounds created by negativity. Anger dissolves in the presence of love, because it is hard to hold bitterness when the heart is softened by compassion. Fear shrinks in the face of love, because to love someone is to care more for their safety and happiness than for your own. Doubt loses its grip when you realize that love makes you capable of more than you imagined. Even despair is weakened, because love plants the seed of hope, reminding you that there is something worth fighting for, something worth holding on to, something worth rising up again and again. When love is the ultimate motivator, failure no longer defines you. Obstacles no longer intimidate you. The opinions of others no longer control you. You are moved by something deeper, something eternal, something that cannot be measured in words or numbers. You become unstoppable, not because you have eliminated fear or pain, but because you have discovered a power greater than both. That power pushes you to break through walls, to ignore the weight of exhaustion, to silence the voice that says, "You can't." It is not about proving yourself to the world, it is about refusing to let love down. Love is the bridge between human weakness and divine strength. It awakens in us a sense of purpose that is impossible to find elsewhere. It makes sacrifices feel light, challenges feel surmountable, and risks feel necessary. And though it may not always change the world outside immediately, it always changes the world within, transforming us into people who are capable of more than we thought, braver than we imagined, stronger than we believed. Negative feelings are often seen as enemies, obstacles that block our path to peace and success. People are taught to avoid them, to suppress them, or to pretend they do not exist. Yet every emotion has a purpose, every feeling carries a message, and negative emotions in particular are signals of tremendous power waiting to be understood. Fear, anger, doubt, guilt, frustration. These feelings are not random intrusions into our lives, they are raw energy. And like raw energy, they can either destroy us when left untamed or fuel us when transformed. The key lies not in denying their presence, but in shifting their direction, in taking what seems like poison and turning it into medicine. Fear is often the strongest of these emotions. It paralyzes the body, clouds the mind, and whispers endless stories of failure. But fear is also an indicator. It points us toward what matters most. A person does not fear losing something they do not value. Fear arises because love is present, because something precious is at stake. When we recognize this, fear can be reshaped. Instead of letting it immobilize us, we can allow it to sharpen our awareness. Fear becomes vigilance. It helps us prepare, pay attention, and act with precision. The same fear that could have frozen us in hesitation can become the alertness that keeps us moving forward with care and strength. Anger too carries energy. Left unchecked, it can burn bridges, wound relationships, and consume the mind with destructive thoughts. But anger is born from passion. It is the recognition that something is unjust, that something precious is threatened. When anger is seen in this light, it no longer has to be destructive. It can be channeled into protection, into resilience, into the drive to create change. Many of the greatest transformations in history began because someone refused to accept injustice, because anger moved them to act. The fire of anger, once directed with clarity, becomes the flame that lights a path forward. Doubt is another heavy weight on the spirit. It whispers that we are not good enough, not capable enough, not worthy of success or love. Many people crumble under its weight, believing doubt to be proof of weakness. Yet doubt is not a verdict. It is a challenge. It forces us to question, to search, to strengthen our foundations. Doubt can be the very thing that pushes us to prepare more deeply, to sharpen our skills, to prove to ourselves that we are capable. The presence of doubt does not mean the absence of potential. It is often the very thing that awakens potential by driving us to rise beyond hesitation. Guilt and regret also carry heavy burdens. They can chain a person to the past, replaying mistakes, drowning them in self-blame. But guilt exists because the heart still cares. It reveals that the conscience is alive, that one desires to do better. When transformed, guilt can become responsibility, a force that inspires us to make amends, to grow, to never repeat the same mistake. Without guilt, there is no drive for redemption, no hunger for personal evolution. It is not meant to trap us, it is meant to teach us. Even despair, the deepest of negative emotions, holds within it a hidden strength. Despair comes when hope seems lost, when the future appears dark, when the weight feels unbearable. But the very presence of despair signals that the soul longs for light. It is proof that within us is an image of a better life, otherwise despair would not exist. By facing despair, by refusing to surrender to its darkness, we discover resilience. Many people only uncover their true strength in the moments they thought they had none left. Despair, when endured and rekindled, becomes determination, the quiet refusal to stay down. The process of shifting negative feelings into fuel begins with awareness. Instead of running from these emotions, we face them directly. We listen to what they are trying to tell us. Fear asks us what we value most. Anger asks us what we must protect. Doubt asks us what we must strengthen. Guilt asks us how we can make things right. Despair asks us to remember why we are still standing. Each emotion, when understood, becomes a compass pointing us back toward growth. Transformation then comes through redirection. Energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be shifted. The energy of fear can be used to plan and prepare. The energy of anger can be used to fuel action. The energy of doubt can be used to build discipline. The energy of guilt can be used to inspire change. The energy of despair can be used to ignite courage. Nothing is wasted when the heart chooses to see beyond the surface of emotion and embrace the hidden strength it carries. What often holds people back is not the emotion itself, but the story they attach to it. Fear becomes paralyzing when one believes it means weakness. Anger becomes destructive when one believes it demands revenge. Doubt becomes suffocating when one believes it proves inadequacy. Guilt becomes crushing when one believes it means unworthiness. Despair becomes endless when one believes it means nothing will ever change. But when these stories are rewritten, when emotions are seen as allies in disguise, everything shifts. Suddenly, what once seemed like a curse reveals itself as a source of power. Every great act of courage carries traces of fear. Every act of justice carries traces of anger. Every triumph over limitation carries traces of doubt. Every step toward redemption carries traces of guilt. Every story of survival carries traces of despair. These emotions are not signs that we are broken. They are signs that we are alive, that we are engaged in the battle of growth, that we are being shaped into someone stronger. By shifting them into fuel, we not only overcome them, we allow them to sculpt us into the version of ourselves that can carry the weight of love, purpose, and greatness. Freedom is often misunderstood. Many people imagine it as the absence of restrictions, the ability to go where they want, do what they want, and live without limits. They believe freedom is determined by external conditions, by whether doors are open, by whether opportunities are given, by whether society allows them to move without restraint. Yet the deepest form of freedom has very little to do with the outside world. True freedom begins within. It is not about the chains that may exist outside of you, but about the chains you break inside of you. Fear, doubt, anger, guilt, resentment, insecurity. These are the prisons most people live in, and they are prisons with invisible walls. A person may live in a country where everything is permitted, where they have resources and opportunities, but if they are trapped by fear of failure, they are not free. Another may live with fewer external privileges, yet carry a spirit that is unshakable, fearless, and filled with vision, and that person is freer than most. This is why freedom cannot be granted by governments or taken away by authorities. It is not dependent on approval, permission, or recognition. Freedom is an inner state, and until that state is cultivated, no external circumstance can truly liberate you. The first step toward inner freedom is recognizing how many chains are self-created. Fear of judgment keeps people silent when their truth needs to be spoken. Fear of rejection keeps them from expressing love or pursuing dreams. Doubt holds them back from stepping into their full potential. Guilt keeps them replaying the past instead of creating a better future. Resentment ties them to pain that has already happened, draining energy from what could be. These chains are heavier than iron. Because they cannot be seen yet, they dictate every choice, every movement, every opportunity missed. When an individual begins to confront these chains, the process of liberation starts. It does not happen all at once, but moment by moment, decision by decision. Freedom comes when you no longer let fear dictate your silence. It comes when you decide that your worth is not determined by someone else's approval. It comes when you release the grip of resentment and choose forgiveness, not because the past was fair, but because you refuse to carry its weight any longer. Freedom is choosing peace over anger, hope over despair, love over bitterness. These choices are made internally long before they manifest externally. There is a profound strength that emerges when you realize that no one can imprison your mind without your consent. External circumstances may create hardship, but the way you interpret and respond to them belongs to you. History is filled with individuals who endured physical captivity yet remained spiritually free. Their bodies may have been confined, but their spirits could not be broken. They refused to let bitterness consume them, refused to let despair define them, and in doing so, they discovered a freedom that outlasted chains, walls, and time itself. This kind of freedom requires courage, because it asks you to face yourself. It is easy to blame circumstances for why we feel trapped. It is harder to admit that often the real battle is happening inside. Facing your fear, confronting your doubt, challenging your anger. These are acts of bravery far greater than breaking through any physical barrier. It is in this internal battle that real freedom is won, for when the mind is free, every external obstacle becomes smaller, every hardship becomes manageable, and every challenge becomes an opportunity to expand. Inner freedom also brings with it a deep sense of peace. When you are no longer enslaved by fear of what others think, you move with authenticity. When you are no longer bound by guilt, you walk lighter, carrying lessons instead of burdens. When you release resentment, your heart becomes open to love again. And when you stop waiting for permission to live your life, you begin to create without hesitation. This peace does not depend on circumstances being perfect. It arises from a state of alignment, where your heart, mind, and spirit are no longer in conflict with themselves. What is powerful about this kind of freedom is that it cannot be taken away. External freedoms can shift in an instant. Circumstances can change. Opportunities can disappear. But if your freedom is rooted inside, it remains no matter what the world throws at you. You carry it with you wherever you go. Even in moments of hardship, you still possess the ability to choose your perspective, your response, your belief. That choice is the essence of freedom, and it cannot be confiscated. When a person lives in this kind of inner freedom, they also inspire others. Their very presence becomes a reminder that true power is not about controlling others, but about mastering oneself. They walk through life with a quiet confidence, unaffected by chaos, unbroken by rejection, unshaken by failure. They show that freedom is not about running away from problems, but about rising above them. It is not about waiting for conditions to change, but about claiming strength from within. And in doing so, they give permission to others to do the same, to question their own chains, to seek their own liberation. Inner freedom is the soil in which love, purpose, and joy grow. Without it, these qualities remain fragile, easily shaken by circumstance. But when freedom is established within, love becomes unconditional, purpose becomes unstoppable, and joy becomes unshakable. This is why the journey to freedom is not about the world outside, but about the world within, because once the heart is free, no external chain can hold it down.